Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a surprise edition of Awaken the World. Surprise. It is 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on this 21st day of the second month in the year of 2022. Interesting, tomorrow will be a Tuesday of all twos. Second month, 22nd day on a Tuesday in the year 2022. Tonight, live, why I never want God on my side. Hello, hello, hello. I think I understand what it is and why one of my eyes start to twitch, and it's actually just the brightness of the screen. It's like, it's so bright. And you know, I do have a 32-inch monitor, and I'm probably a little closer than I should be, but really it's all about my vision. So, first of all, as always, let me express my love for each and every one of you. You know, no matter what's going on right now, no matter what you think may be up with you or not right, whatever the case may be, I assure you that that is not the case. Every single one of us, every single one of us is experiencing exactly what they need to experience in order to give you the best opportunity to wake up, to raise your consciousness and realize the truth of your existence. And in that, you are loved by all creation. So, why are we having this little talk tonight? And you know, I don't want to ever seem that I'm going down the negative road, because I don't ever live in that space. I don't really live in a place of well, honestly, it's perpetual positivity, but it's not positivity because I'm blinding myself to what's happening. It's positivity because I know the end game. And that, you know, I'm prone to forgetting that having two near-death experiences, you know, has moved me far beyond the idea of belief and concept. And I just can't get too worked up about anything anymore. I mean, no matter what, I'm a laughter-filled, always singing and dancing sort of guy. And as a matter of fact, I put on a whole hour today in 3 different sessions, just working out with the dance music and having a blast. it's it's part of, you know, being me, I guess, that I revel in the use of my physical body, you know, and I maintain you know, the same 31-inch waist I've had ever since I was about 20 years old, really. I mean, I stay in really good shape, and that is not because I have any sort of egoic attachment to the body. What it is that I'm enjoying using it while I'm here. And, you know, despite the fact of all the things that have gone wrong with it, and my back issues, which, you know, have flared up again as of late. But as I said to Kelly yesterday, I refuse to allow that to impinge upon my own personal decision to live every day fully and happily and joyfully. Why? Because I woke up. And that's gratitude for you. I woke up. That's enough to have a good day. That is enough in that very moment of opening my eyes to say, another day. What a gift. There could never be bad within that. Now, that doesn't close me down to being a very compassionate, passionate, and empathetic person. Not at all. But what it means is that I don't get attached to those states. I allow those states to flow in and out without blockage, without accumulation on my being. And that's really what you're doing when you're learning to ride the waves in life. You know, you're learning to surf those waves, to ride through those storms without splashing so much water into your boat that you simply sink in the process. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, kind of an interesting title to the video, I know. And in truth, there's really no such thing as God being on your side. Why? Because it's all God. Therefore, God's on everything's side. Everything's. Not just us, not just any group of us, but everything's side. And that's the real honest truth of it. And trust me, no definition of God is going to explain to you what that one divine consciousness is. But let's take a look at a couple of interesting things here, because, you know, this is an important discussion to have, especially in light of the rise of fascism, the autocratic dictatorship type of governing, the right-wing explosion that's really occurred, you know, legitimized by Trump over those 4 years, and I guess 2018 to 2022, and, you know, running the very real risk of seeing those sorts of right-leaning mentalities and autocratic dictatorship ideas spreading again. And when we look historically, we see how democracies tend to work better when times are good. But when times begin to get tough, it's very easy to fall into a pseudo-democracy and even get to a point where you have no democracy. So I do want to be very clear, first and foremost, that, you know, we still do very much have what passes for a real democracy these days, as far as that goes. But it's not that point. The point is what's happening underneath and behind that we must be very wary of. So the first thing I want to talk about, and you know, I'm not bashing on Christians per se, although, you know, there's a large group of Christians who will deserve this shot, I guess, and this is where, you know, unfortunately, you tend to find no more the volume of self-righteous Christians in comparison to any other religion that I've experienced, any other faith system, is just right off the charts. And maybe that's because Christianity is predominantly and was predominantly and still is in very many ways the original racist religion. And I know that's going to be a hard thing to accept, but in all honesty, it's really the case, and we can begin with the depictions of Jesus Christ as an example. And it goes on from there, but we're not going to get deep into that. The idea, though, is whenever you've elevated yourself in your self-righteousness, you run the very real risk of egoically thinking that now you're in the position of God. And that happens because you feel that God is on your side. And when God is on your side, that by default means that God is not on your perceived enemy's side, whatever that enemy may represent. This, of course, is the antithesis of God. You know, we only have to look at John 3:16. You know, for God so loved the world not only some of the world, not the people of earth, not human beings, but the world, that he gave his only Son. Why? Not to condemn, but to save. But it's very easy to condemn when we find ourselves in a point of righteousness. It extends into a deeper level of society, and we unfortunately have taken that biblical concept, and because we live in the Western world, the biblical concept, whether you have any exposure to the Bible or not, still holds very true. It's one of those background programming that's occurred over the last 1,500 years or so altogether. The truly righteous people, those who really understand the relationship, they love the sinner, if we must have a sinner, but they don't love the sin. And this is supposed to be true in the way we deal with criminals. We're not supposed to hate the criminal. Our very charter and justice system is designed to separate the crime from the criminal. But of course, that's not what actually happens. And this mentality that we hate the sinner for what we perceive as a sin against us or against our ideas or against what we think is true or whatever the case may be, this is something that has only grown exponentially with the rise of these autocratic ideas, these fascist concepts, the ideas that business and capitalism and power are going to somehow save us at any given time. When we look back in the Bible, we can see right in the book of Matthew, the depths through which having the idea that God is on your side extends. So we look in Matthew and we see that the Pharisees, when they were performing out or giving alms, that they would blow trumpets. Why? To make sure everyone knew what they were doing. To proclaim their righteousness. To literally honk in your face. Kind of sounds a little bit like something else. A lot of times when we have the idea that we are somehow, above others and have God on our side, when things don't work out, we end up wallowing in a sort of self-pity, right? The idea that we've been chastened in some way or given a trial in life. And this is also a dangerous way to think. In truth, you are deeply loved, and any perceived trial is not a trial, but an opportunity. So we're going to take this a little deeper. There was a study done by a gentleman by the name of, Brad Bushman. And he is what was he precisely? He is a psychologist at the University of Michigan. And he spent the last 20 years looking at the impacts of aggression and violence in media and its impact on human behavior. And, he's honestly very disturbed at the results. So what he did is he actually set up a test. And what he determined is that the belief that God is on my side actually makes us more prone and makes it easier for us to inflict suffering and pain upon another. And guess what? That same belief that God is on our side also makes human beings more likely to engage in violence. And here's the really interesting thing about his 20-year study looking at all forms of media, as well as running these experiments. You didn't have to even believe in God or the Bible to exhibit an increased likelihood to engage in violence or to inflict pain or suffering on another. Just the idea that there was a divine being on your side, even if you had no belief in it, was enough to validate that sort of behavior. We have bought into an idea, it's almost been part of the programming, that anything that is different from how we are is somehow wrong or somehow less. And that's the biggest issue with that righteousness, the idea that I'm the saved one, that well, I'm going to heaven. And I always thought, how selfish. I mean, who cares? What about all the people who aren't then? What about those people? Same for people who wish the rapture would happen and Armageddon would just get on with it. Who would want such suffering brought upon the world? We're already doing a pretty good job already. I don't think we need Armageddon. We're going to look after that on our own end. One of the things that came up, and one of the comments a group member had made, and I really appreciate the comment, and I just want to say, and I hope it's not embarrassing, but Denise, one of the things I absolutely adore about you is that, you speak honestly what's on your mind right out, bang, right there. If you've got questions, if you have issues with it, whatever the case may be, and to me that is a beautiful thing, and if everyone would be so open in doing so with each other, we would have much easier times communicating with each other. So Denise had actually said, I trust in God, the universe has our back when standing in truth. And that's absolutely right. You can have absolute trust and faith in that divine consciousness. Absolutely. And it is also true that the universe has all of our backs. The reason being is because we're not the real thing here. We're the transient thing. The real thing is that the universe is that divine consciousness manifest. It's made of, swims in, and is part of it, as all of we are. Undifferentiated. All God stuff. But in the frame of reference in which we're looking at truth right now, down here in this physical realm, our day-to-day interactions, really trying to leave the bulk of the spiritual aside for a moment. My response was, well, a Muslim jihadist also trusts in God and feels they are standing in truth. So does the trucker at the Freedom Convoy, plastering Jesus loves you on the side of a trailer as he vilifies the media and calls for their execution. So too the Russian soldier who happens to be an Orthodox, a member of the Orthodox faith, who is praying for guidance on the morning that he's going to unknowingly shoot holes into a kindergarten, killing children. So how is it then? How do we come to the place where we can honestly have dialogue with each other based on some measure of reality? And yes, there are 7.7 billion some odd versions of reality. As far as human being goes, every single one of them having a slightly different perception. But we must have a foundation to communicate. That there must be a ground with which we can look upon each other and say, well, that is valid and that is not valid and needs to be reconsidered or rethought. Yeah, as Kelly said, Hitler was convinced he was doing the will of God. And he was convinced that Christians the world around were going to love him and that he would be a saint for doing what he was doing. And that is no lie. So as I said, how do we find that ground then? How do we find the common space in the eye of such things as all of these anti-vax protesters and anti-mandate protesters and anti-government protesters? How do we find that balance? Well, the only thing we can really do is form a foundation of truth, some layer of bedrock, so that we can stand together eye to eye and talk without rocking and falling and bouncing all over the place, not really even understanding what each other is talking about. And because there are all these different versions of reality, and a lot of it's twisted intentionally, people who are twisting reality into something even more unreal than the unreal it already is in an attempt to further their own ends. How do we weed through all of that these days? Because it is rampant. It is everywhere. There's only one way that I know of. And I think this is a really important discussion to have. You see, as long as we're going to live in a world where we say, go ahead and say whatever you want, go ahead and believe in whatever you want to believe, with absolutely no core foundational agreement as to what reality represents, we're only going to see things getting worse and worse and worse. So my solution is this, is we begin to pay more attention to the way our thoughts are making us feel, to the way that we're responding to what another is doing. We allow our intuition, spirit, to take back over again. And this is a personal mission. It isn't a mission to put upon someone else. It is a mission for yourself to be able to recognize when you're speaking from a place of truth and reality as opposed from illusion and falsehood. So, for example, if you're agitated, if you're angry and upset, no amount of claiming God on your side is going to hide the fact that you're not engaged in the truth, you're engaged in your ego. And I know that can be hard to deal with. When we are speaking from truth, we are calm. We are assured. We are powerful in the silence of our own voice. We are not shouting and screaming. When we are speaking and demonstrating from the highest places of truth within ourselves, we do not experience fear or anger or vitriol. Those are all feeling states manifest by egoic thought patterns. They are the unreal. So how can we carry this out into the world where we have to carry this out for ourselves? Because it is only in that calm self-assurance of being that we truly do affect others in the best possible way. We do so because we're not trying to stuff it down their throats. We're not trying to yell it and scream it and demand it and cajole and whatever we can, hold ransom. We're not doing that. When we're speaking from that foundation I speak of, the truth is its own power. You are simply the messenger. And in being that messenger, there is no need, no uprising of anxiety, of upsettedness. The difference between truth and belief, the difference between knowing and thinking about it, is always obvious. Living in truth, anchored in truth, when someone else denies your truth, it has no effect on you. The only people who respond most often negatively are those who only have belief and concept to hold to. They don't have that bedrock of truth. It's there within them too, but they refuse to see it yet. They're not ready to see it yet. And that doesn't make them less. They're just as equal, just as loved, just as valuable as we are. All of us are. So to sum that up, I really want to get the point across that we run a real risk when we begin to believe that somehow there is a divine force that is on our side. And there is always, in that relativistic space we live in, that balance of yin and yang, the spoken our side is always met with an unspoken, and you're not. God is not on your side. And then the next step that happens is we elevate ourselves above that which is not enjoying the luxury of being on God's side. And when we elevate ourselves above it, we begin to see that as less, whether it's a person or an animal or a tree or a piece of whatever it may be, we see it as less than us, and we disconnect from it. So that's why I say I never want God on my side. Why? Because there are no sides in this. We are all part of one divine creation. We are all loved by that same creation. We are all just as worthy of a calm and peaceful existence, of having enough. That's it, that's all. Namaste, have a beautiful Monday night. Kelly's busy working again Tuesday, Wednesday. She's got her course. I'm, dedicated into my own course as well. You can tell whenever I get sort of molded into new learning, I forget to shave and stuff like that. I promise I'll look better for next time. That's it, that's all. Have a beautiful night.